going to add a different variety of non-technical education. We basically say that you can go, if you go up to class 8, then you get a certain weightage. If you go up to class 10, then you get a certain weightage. So all these are different varieties of non-technical weightage that you can get depending on how much you spend on education. Okay, so there are these two wages associated with these two different occupations. And of course, WN is a fixed rate, and WS is the weighted per unit of education in the non-technical sector. So that every time if you go for 80 years of education, then you get WS time, whatever is your time that you spend in education. Okay. And obviously, the technical education wages have to be much higher, otherwise nobody is going to go for technical education. Well, this is the utility function of the household. So basically, first period consumption and second period consumption, certain weightage on your consumption in second period, certain weightage on the bequest that you leave to your children. I'm going to skip most of the technical part since I have just 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes left. So what I'm going to show you is that basically, in this model, there are 3 ways in which you can smoothen your consumption over time. One is you can save. And saving means you can transfer your current consumption to tomorrow's consumption. And there is a rate of interest which is, if your return is associated return is 1 plus half. Then you can work as child labor in the sense that not go for schooling, even for primary schooling. And then there is the opportunity cost in the sense that if you don't go for that, then you are basically every time you go for 1 year of schooling, 1 more years of schooling, there is a gamma increase in your productivity even in the non-technical sector. So that's the opportunity cost. And third is you can also borrow, but because markets are imperfect, the borrowing rate is different than the lending rate, and therefore it's given by I is greater than R. Okay, and this is the assumption which basically says that going for even primary education with the cost gamma, going for that is less, and if you have to borrow, if you have to transfer resources to the current period, then there are 2 ways. You can go for child labor with the opportunity cost of gamma, or you can borrow from the market with the opportunity cost of 1 plus I. And because gamma is less than 1 plus I, you always, if you have to consume more today, then you are going to go for child labor. And now look at the first part of the equality. It says that 1 plus I is less than gamma, which means that if you have to go for transfer your resources to tomorrow, then either you can save, which gives you a return of 1 plus R, or you can go for education. Each marginal unit investment in education gives you gamma at the margin. And that also means that if you have to transfer resources to future, you are going to again go for education and then go for lending. So basically education is something which you always use first to smoothen your consumption across periods, either from first to second or from second to third. From first to second or from second to first. Okay. Now these are so what are your choices now? Your one choice is you don't go for skill formation. Okay, so basically you don't make this age investment. You decide whether to go for 2 years of schooling or 3 years of schooling optimally, and this will basically tell you that what is the utility associated with that. Then you can go the other choices. You can go for skill formation, and if you want to go for skill formation, A, you have to complete your schooling, and B, you have to invest the same amount in the first year itself. Okay, so you have solved the same utility function with this constraint now, with the fact that now you are going for skill formation. So the idea is that basically you are doing all this in your mind with all the costs, and this gives you a certain, after you solve this problem, you get a certain indirect utility out of this exercise, and if you do the first exercise, you do a certain indirect utility out of the first exercise, and then you look at these 2 utilities, and then you finally decide whether to go for skill formation or not. Okay? Again, the result is that, if you compare the indirect utilities, you will see that the result is that it's always the wealthy people who are going to go for skill formation, and the poorer people who are not going to, when I mean poorer, I mean those who have lower weakness, lower wealth to begin with, are not going to go for skill formation. And if you want to look at it diagrammatically, this would be your indirect utility curve, plotted against different inheritance, different levels of wealth, different levels of initial inheritance, and those who have high inheritance are going to go for, these are basically the indirect utility associated with not going for skill formation. And the linear line is the indirect utility associated for going for skill formation, and there is always going to be a cutoff. Ignore all the vertical lines except for the dotted one, and there is a number called F. F is the cutoff, so it means that those who have wealth level above F are always going to go for skill formation, those are not going to go for skill formation. How does this, how much time do I have? 1 minute? Okay, how does it show up in terms of long-run poverty trap? But it shows up in terms of long run property just to the request function, because remember, everybody, let's say, is first using an occupation that generates a second period income. Out of that second period income, you're leaving some request. So it is conceivable that even though you're working at the skill level, your income is not sufficient for you. The income that you give to your children, or out of the income, the part that you give to your children is not sufficient for your children to go for skill formation. So what matters therefore is the intergenerational link between your wealth vis-a-vis your children's wealth. What you are receiving as your request vis-a-vis what your children are getting as your request. And this dynamic equation here is precisely telling you that. So it's telling you that depending on your Y, which is your second period income, out of which you leave a certain proportion JSF to your children. So what is that amount and how do they look if you plot them in an intergenerational phase diagram. And this is one hypothetical scenario how your wealth, if I plot my wealth vis-a-vis my children's wealth, how the phase diagram looks like. Now, just ignore all the vertical lines here, and the red lines are really the corresponding. On the horizontal axis you have my request, on the vertical axis you have correspondingly my children's request, and the red lines are basically plotting for each of the different levels of my wealth, how much wealth I am going to leave to my children. And the intersection with the 45-degree line, which is a linear blue line going upward, is basically telling you what are the possible steady states. And remember, steady state here basically means that if I leave that amount, if I inherit that amount of wealth, my children are also going to inherit that amount of wealth. So that equilibrium is going to perfection. Okay. Now, if you look at the diagram, also notice that after beyond A, there are two different request lines, one above, one below. And that's only because, remember, above the A, you are going to go for skill formation, and the return from skill formation is uncertain, and therefore the bequest that you are leaving to your children, from that income is also uncertain. So the upper line tells you that if you are successful, then that's the bequest that you are going to leave, and the bottom line tells you that if you are unsuccessful, then that's the bequest that you are going to leave. Now in this model, you can see that you can identify that B and C are the two stable equilibrium points, and the economy is going to gravitate towards that. More importantly, in this diagram, even if you start with a wealth level beyond F, okay, even if you start to the right of that diagram beyond F, what is going to happen is that over time, one back shock, one failure is going to bring you to the lower request line, and from then it slippery road all the way down until you reach to a point to the left of it. So this is what I meant when I said that the long run it can be persistent, in the sense that even if you do not have enough, even if you start as a skill level, over time the household may gravitate towards unskill level or a low level equilibrium track. Now, just one minute. So now this was basically without ICL, now we bring in ICL. What happens if we bring in ICL? What is ICL doing? Well, what ICL is doing is basically, it's collecting, suppose there are a number of people who say that we are going to take this loan. And P of them, we know that only P of them are going to be successful. By law of large numbers, only P of them are going to be successful. They are going to earn a weighted WS, and we are going to tax them and only them. And that entire tax rate will go to the, so in implicitly, so that's the tax rate which we are going to collect tomorrow. And we are going to give against them, we are going to give loans today. So the right hand side here is basically all the loans that we are going to give for financing higher education for each of these people, although all of them may not be successful. Right? So this is ideally therefore intertemporally balanced budgeting, in the sense that today you are spending something, but tomorrow, given the probability of success, you are going to recover that money from the successful element. And there is an implicit interest rate associated with this scheme, which is exactly the interest rate associated with the corporate trading market, which is 1%. More importantly, what we're going to do is, because you are lowering the interest rate as well as providing a cushion, now more people are going to go for skill formation. So you do exactly the same exercise now as before, except that now when you go for higher education, you know that you are going to do it through ICL. And because there is an incentive, because you don't have to pay in case of failure, that basically reduces the cutoff. The F that I was talking about gets reduced. And what it does for your, so what it does for your intertemporal poverty tax is the following. So this is the poverty tax that I just talked about. And notice there is an F here. And if I bring in ICL, these are the green lines, and these are the request lines associated with the ICL. And then an FICL, the cutoff point, people who are going for skill formation because of providing an ICL, is basically FICL, which is always lower than F. So most people are going for skill formation. More importantly, the request lines are such that if you fail, even then you it does, and how it works better than credit market or individual taxation, I can take that up if there's a question.